The story of the great Ritchie Valens is well documented, but what some people don't know is his worst fear became a reality. For the mid to late 1950s, Ritchie Valens was well ahead of his time and was one of the most prominent young musicians in the game. For a mainstream music career that only went on for about 8 months, Ritchie Valens had a deep list of really good songs he had composed, including Donna, Come On Let's Go, My Little Susie, We Belong Together, and of course La Bamba. Ritchie's untimely death can never be forgotten, and his legacy in the music industry remains strong, but what some don't know is what happened 2 years before his death. But what initially sparked Ritchie's fear of flying is an incident at his own junior high school on January 31st of 1957. Thankfully, Ritchie was not at school on this day. He was attending his grandfather's funeral. What happened on this day was catastrophic, as 2 planes would crash into each other nearly head-on 20,000 feet above Ritchie Valens' school. Due to falling debris from the airplane crash, it would land onto the schoolyard below, injuring over 70 kids and killing 3 of them, one of which being Ritchie Valens' best friend. Now obviously a traumatic incident like this one was for Ritchie, it spawned his fear of flying, so much so that he would often have nightmares about he himself dying in a plane crash. This fear would persist until the night of February 3rd, 1959 at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa. February 3rd of 1959 was the midst of the Winter Dance Party tour, highlighting several of music's biggest names at that time, including Ritchie Valens, Dion and the Belmonts, the Big Bopper, Buddy Holly, and more. Tommy Allsup was present on that tour. He was playing alongside Buddy Holly and Waylon Jennings as more so a makeshift version of Buddy Holly and the Crickets. Buddy Holly, a Texas kid, had long grown tired of these grave weather conditions and these terrible buses that weren't fit for regular human beings, let alone big-name musicians like themselves, so he decided it was best to charter a plane to the next location. Now, the only issue with doing this was there were so many guys on this tour bus and only 2 seats available on the plane next to pilot Roger Peterson and, of course, Buddy Holly. And then we get to the infamous coin flip story. Tommy Allsup's story is almost universally accepted in regards to him and Ritchie's coin flip, but if you ask Dion DiMucci, it went down a little bit differently. In the story that Dion DiMucci told, he had said that Buddy Holly had a room with all the headliners in it, Buddy, Bopper, Ritchie, and Dion, and he had said of the 4 of them, 3 of them can go on this plane ride. They gotta figure out who's going. Now in Dion's story, the Big Bopper was already a lock to go. It came down to him versus Ritchie Valens, and the winner would get the final seat on the plane. Until Dion heard how much money it would cost to get on said plane, $36, which to him was a golden number because that matched the exact amount that was due for his rent monthly. He could not see himself paying that much for one trip. Now in Tommy's story, it's obviously way different, and he had said the plane was originally meant to be himself, Buddy Holly, Waylon, and the pilot. Throughout the night though, both Waylon Jennings and Tommy Allsup both gave up their seat. The Big Bopper would ask Waylon to have his seat on the plane due to the Big Bopper being incredibly ill. Ritchie had been pestering Tommy all night about giving up his seat on the plane. Ritchie was also incredibly sick. It got to the point to where Tommy pulled out a $50 from his pocket, flipped it in the air, and told Ritchie to call it. Ritchie won the coin toss and won the right to ride on said plane, and thus they knew who all was going to be on it. Not long after takeoff, the plane would crash into a cornfield in Iowa, killing all 4 men instantly, and thus that day being remembered as the day the music died. Another interesting point to back up Tommy's story is when the plane crashed, they had initially thought Tommy was involved because they had found his ID, but he gave his ID the previous night to Buddy to get the mail from the next town from Tommy's mom. And unfortunately, with his death, Ritchie's biggest fear of dying in a plane crash was a reality. A day that's forever etched in music history. If you ever wanted to visit Ritchie's grave, it's in Mission Hills Cemetery in Mission Hills, California, and they have a wonderful tribute at the crash site in Clear Lake, Iowa for the men that lost their lives on the day the music died. An eerie coincidence and a very heart-wrenching death for a generational talent.